Welcome to another Lost Railway Towns episode. I'm in the Welsh town of Caernarvon for this one, or should that be the royal town of Caernarvon? Don't really need to explain too much on what Caernarvon's well known for. The castle, iconic castle, and castle walls through the town. Very distinct shape, isn't it? It's got a population of just under 10k, and it's a port, but it's not on the coast, and it sits on the Menai Strait, which is there. That's Anglesey. You can see it at the other side there. This castle was built by King Edward. It dates back to the 13th century. It's played an important role in that long-running feud between England and Wales. And it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a popular tourist attraction with hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. A notable resident, David Lloyd George, is the Prime Minister of the UK from 1916 to 1922. But what of Caernarfon's railway history? We've got 5 stations to tell you about here. And it's quite a varied history of industrial, narrow gauge and standard gauge lines. First station, 1852. Named Caernarvon, it's the terminus of the Bangor and Caernarvon Railway. It's quite a size. Got an engine shed just to the north of the station. That's where the petrol station is now. We also had a goods shed to the south of the station. We'll show you that where that was in the car park up there. But this is the site of the old station. It's now a Morrison's supermarket. We've seen that just like at Leek, wasn't it? It's quite a big footprint you'll see here, and we can see if we look at the old maps, it was quite a decent size, and it was enhanced several times over the course of its life. So here's the car park, roughly just over this side of it here will be where we had that goods shed, and we can see that on the old maps. Just show you that now. And that's looking back to Morrison's, that's looking back to the station. Now there's the back of Morrison's. Now just keep in mind I said this was a terminus station, and we're going to be coming back to this station a little bit later in Caernarfon's railway story. Now this is the Slate Quay in Caernarvon, and this was the site of the second station to arrive, 1856 Caernarvon Castle Railway Station, and that was the northern passenger terminus of the pronouncing this right, Nankle Railway, a 3-foot 6-inch narrow gauge line. Sorry, I just need to clarify there, 1856 was the date when the Nankle Railway started with its passenger service. It was the first public railway to be operated in North Wales. However, the Nankle Railway had a terminus by the castle as far back as 1828, when the horse-drawn Slate tramway opened. And that was just in front of the castle, just on the quay side here. And if you look at the old maps, plenty of lines are going on here. When I say a station, it's a station in the loosest of sense. And I think, if I remember rightly, it had a booking hall, but no actual platforms. I think you just kind of got off the train. Early Slate Railway that was providing a passenger service. That's a beautiful spot, isn't it, though? And as I say, that's just underneath the castle on the quay side here. And this is called Slate Quay. But look, we've got these old rails being reused here on the quay side. But look, what's caught my attention is, look in the ground here in the tarmac, we've actually got some track work. I wonder if that's original track, or is it a bit too thick? Not sure why it'd be there otherwise. I'm guessing they've just tarmacked over, look, because look, there's a ridge all the way down here. This old aerial photo from 1953 shows a line still in the old Slate Quay. It's too far away to tell if this is standard gauge or narrow gauge, but you can just make out those small turntables that are on those early maps. There's a harbour officers, date stamp of 1840 up there. I think that booking office for that Nankler Railway was somewhere near here, somewhere near the harbour offices, apparently. Now that station only lasted 9 years, because in 1865, the Caernarvonshire Railway, now that was building its standard gauge line to Caernarvon, just to the south. And that took a lot of the track bed for that Nankler Railway. Now that Caernarvonshire Railway, now when they completed their line, they had a terminus just to the south of Caernarvon station. So that's the third station in Caernarvon. And that was in a little area of Caernarvon, just to the south of the town, and it was called Caernarvon Pant. And then in 1869, we had the Caernarvon and Llanberis Railway that was open, and that terminated at Caernarvon Morpeth Railway Station, again, just to the south of the town. So at this point in time, we've got 3 terminus stations, but only one of them is really close to the town centre. But all that's about to change after the London and North Western Railway assumed control of all 3 lines. We now move on to talking about the Caernarvon Town Line, which we see appearing here in pink. This threaded itself through the centre of this historic town through a 164-yard long tunnel. The out-of-town terminus stations at Pant and Morpeth are closed at this point, and the only station in Caernarvon was the original one, which saw somewhat of an expansion as it sat on the junction of these 3 lines. And we're now walking along the route of that Caernarvon Town Line. But you can see the cutting walls on both sides. This bridge going over here. Now you can tell by the gradient on here, we're not at the true height, we're not at the true altitude of the railway here, are we? Because it's dropping quite significantly. So I'm assuming it was infilled back up to the car park up there. But it's great that this is, he's kind of left like this, isn't it? This is the route of the old line of the Caernarvon Town Line. It's just left, it's cutting through the middle of the town to the tunnel that we'll see soon. And there goes that line, look. I can see the tunnel in the distance. You'd be forgiven in thinking that this was double track. It's certainly wide enough. I suppose it was, but the lines to both Llanberis and Caernarvon have already separated upon leaving the station, running side by side through the cutting and through the tunnel, before they went their separate ways south of the town. And here is the route that the tunnel takes underneath the town as it passes directly between Caernarvon's main square. And here's where our tunnel for the Caernarvon Town Line emerges, look. 164 yards long. We can't walk through that tunnel, unfortunately. You can see daylight, so it's not a tremendously long one. And that was converted for use as a road in the 1990s. Services on the Llanberis and Caernarvon lines began to wind down in the 1930s. Llanberis Railway clung on to the odd excursion and freight working until 1964, and the tracks were lifted in 1965. The line south to Caernarvon also closed in 1964, meaning our original station was once again a terminus. And here we are back again at the back of Morrison's, the site of Caernarvon Station. So the railway between Bangor and Caernarvon escaped the beaching, the first round of beaching cuts, and they thought that the railway was safe from any imminent closure. However, in 1968, it did appear on that list, and it was scheduled for closure in 1970. So that was Caernarvon's last railway station closing. and that was it for the town's railway presence in the space of a few short years. It did, however, get a little bit of a stay of execution because of just up the coast here, the Britannia Bridge, which connects Bangor, the line between Bangor and Holyhead, that suffered the fire in 1970, and this railway line got a stay of execution because they couldn't get over to the ferry terminal at Holyhead. They kept Caernarvon station open for a further 2 years until 1972 as a Freightliner terminal. But in 1972, when the Britannia Bridge was reopened, that was it, and that was the last Caernarvon saw of any mainline railway. So we've seen 4 stations, haven't we? I mentioned that there was 5 stations. Because although we've talked about those 4 stations, that wasn't the end of Caernarvon's railway story. Because in 1997, the Welsh Highland Railway arrived in Caernarvon. And as we know, the Welsh Highland Railway, these days it comes from Portmaddock, doesn't it? And that ran into a temporary terminus from 1997 until this new present day terminus was built, and this was opened in 2019. This end of the Welsh Highland Railway is actually built on the route of that Caernarvon town line. So if they were to extend, which they have no plans to, look, they'd shoot straight into that tunnel. It's just literally only 20-30 yards past the end of the head shunt, isn't it, that tunnel? It's a great view there, look, isn't it, with the castle in the background. They've managed to get that railway right into the heart of Caernarvon there. So that is Caernarvon and how it became a lost railway town. Thank you ever so much for watching. Thanks to all my channel members. Anyone who buys me a coffee, sends me a super thanks, supports the channel in any way. So I'll see you on the next video. Ta-ra!